thank you everyone for being here as well on this very interesting discussion on all things electric and what electric conclave can conclude without plugging in for a quick charge, is it? And that's what this session is going to be, a very quick fast charge on all things charging. And I have to say it's a very interesting mix we have here today, because we've got, of course, passenger cars, we've got two-wheelers, and we have somebody who's doing swappable batteries. So I'd just like to open this with a question to each one of you. In terms of charging, whenever we talk EVs, everyone says charging is really the problem. Now, if you look at that, what is your opinion? Is this more a charging hardware issue in terms of chargers being available? Or perhaps is it also a software issue in terms of, you got to have the apps, you've got to have correct payments, you don't get to do cash payments and things like that. Just your initial thoughts on why is this an issue in people's head, hardware or software or both? Balaji, maybe we could start with you and go down the line.
Thank you, Sergius. I think, when we look at charging and, charging being seen as a concern for EV adoption, there's a very interesting stat. When we looked at people who actually consider EVs and end up buying EVs, and we asked them, is charging an issue? Or rather, what were the reasons that you did not, I'm talking about people who considered EVs but did not buy. So we asked them, what are the reasons that you did not ultimately end up buying an EV? And only about a third of the cases does charging pop out. But then we asked people who never considered an EV, and we asked them, why are you not considering EVs? And nearly 50% of the answers, the first choice is something related to charging. So in a way, I think, the folks who are serious considerers of EVs sort of do the diligence of finding out where the chargers are, get themselves convinced of it, etc. However, there's a lack of mass awareness on charging, and I broadly would categorize it to the lack of visibility of charging. I think you don't see charging stations with big branding, with prominent signs, for example, on the highways or even in cities saying charging here, So there is a lack of visibility of charging. So in my mind, the hardware part of it, the visibility of the hardware part of it is one key thing. And then once you move from there into people who are actually serious about EVs, who have bought an EV, who are out there trying to use EVs, there are certainly certain software issues, including reliability, interoperability, including, for example, the ease of charging, the number of apps they need to carry, the way they pay for it, etc. But in many ways, the softer aspects are slightly easier to solve because this is someone who's already made the journey of the mental journey of moving towards buying an EV. And what we need to do is make life easy for them. On the other hand, the bulk majority who aren't considering EVs, who think charging is just not there because they don't see it, I think that's a bigger problem that needs to be solved for the growth of the EV industry.
Right. Thanks, Balaji.
I think
thanks. To you. Yeah.
So I think this whole shift in EV is actually more the fact that the biggest transition from ICE to EV is the fact that there's a complete change in relationship with energy. I think, if you look at two-wheelers, you're still going to have a throttle, you're still going to have a brake, you're still going to have pillion riders. It's not going to change too much. Of course, you get magic twist and cruise like that on Ather. You can innovate. But fundamentally, the way you're going to even ride or drive the car doesn't change. It's an accelerator, brake. Everything else remains the same. But for the entire industry or vehicle industry, they never had to deal with how do you worry about refueling or how do you worry about providing energy access. And that's generally a big unknown for a lot of folks, I think. And so therefore, there's always that worry about, hey, what will charging mean? And I think Balaji spoke about software aspects. So now you're suddenly thinking about, oh, wait, I need to worry about how my customer will experience that downtime for 20, 30 minutes. As an OEM that's been very strong on building electric vehicles or vehicles in general, which is my strength, I can worry about supply chain, I can worry about production, but charging is a completely new facet for many people to get into as well. So I think the fear around charging is just generally, there's this unknown thing. Today's panel, what Balaji, I think first panel and what Balaji also spoke about, charging anxiety is for those who've not yet bought the EV. Once they buy the EV, charging becomes just like how they plug the phone. For Ather and in the two-wheeler space, I think from day one, no one was thinking about fast charging for two-wheelers, but we started building it out, fast charging for over about 6 years now, and you can realize there's a big change in people's mind shift to how they want to relate to energy and the use of energy. So I think that is why there's a big unknown about traditional or I think existing OEMs. How can we get into this energy space? How can we get into refueling? How can we solve for customer experience in that? Hardware is easy, software is easy. It's just now both are very closely interlinked and not been solved before, but now it's just something to think about together and not as a separate problem statement. So that's why the general fear or, oh, charging needs to be solved, charging needs to be solved. I think.
Thanks. Anand, what about you?
No, thank you. I agree. But I personally think it is across the spectrum, and we have to go even before the hardware. I think India is not short of electrons. India is short of, our problem is 11 kV lines and transformers, number one. Right? So first of all, how do we ensure that? And then hardware and software are the easy parts, but then I think the execution and operation is a bigger challenge. 1 out of 3 chargers are not functioning. So reliability is a big concern. I'm not worried about whether I can get the, when I get to a station, can I get the charge? I'm worried about whether there will be a gun that is working. The theft is very, very big as well. So we actually plan for what is there normally in a business case, but we don't work around the abuse cases. India is not a use case, I always say, it's an abuse case. Right, so a lot of issues around operations are also very big, which is which actually impacts your experience. You're not sure you will get the charge or not. So I think hardware and software are the easiest part of that. I think the bigger problem lies on both sides of the spectrum, which is on the grid side and then on the operation side.
Right. Thanks for that as well. And that's a very interesting point, Anand, that you make. And I think the conclusion from this is clearly there are sort of hurdles all through. Whether it's hardware, whether it's software, and like you said, whether it's even energy supply and things like that. And we've seen OEMs, getting into this now because you've got to fuel your product that you're making. And in fact, I'll start with you, Balaji, again. Tata, you all have the Mega Charger initiative that you all did, tying up with CPOs, a charge point operator. Do you think this is something that OEMs need to do, or rather you're forced to do? And what's been your experience, with this?
I think when it comes to EVs, I think, us having taken the lead to pioneer this technology here in India, I think it was always clear to us from day one that we can't wait for this ecosystem to form. So there was no choice really but to really build this infrastructure, and at the time we partnered with Tata Power, and then as startups started entering the space, we realized that they need guidance. The most important thing in charging infrastructure is utilization, because you're sinking a lot of money into capex, and unless you have utilization, you're not going to make it back. So we used insights from our EV users to kind of guide them into where to put these chargers. That was, in a way, what we called open collaboration 1.0. And then we graduated from there to actually helping charge point operators install higher quality charging infrastructure that is interoperable with us, that will have ease of payments and ease of discoverability, all of which result in greater utilization for them and also greater convenience for our customers. Now, why did we do this, right? I mean, once someone's bought an EV, whether a charger, is available or not, whether it is functional or not, ultimately it's the OEM's problem, because, they've bought a car, they've invested. Any customer who's bought an EV, our EV, it's our responsibility to make sure that their mobility need is met. So that's the philosophy that we had taken, and with that philosophy, we had sort of gone ahead and sponsored these mega chargers, where we work with the most reliable CPOs, and particularly the most sought after locations and large format, so that anyone pulling in to one of these chargers doesn't have to worry about, will I get a charger to charge my car? Will it be operational? Will it be safe, etc.? So we're taking care of all of that. And in my mind, I think if you look at even globally, where OEMs have been successful in EVs, this sort of an effort has happened either at an individual OEM level or as a consortium of OEMs. And frankly, we as OEMs have a lot of data. Telematics gives us a lot of data. Customers complain to us, customers talk to us. So we are well positioned to guide the formation of this ecosystem. Now, should we continue to keep investing in it in the long haul? Probably not beyond a certain point, because it'll spread out and all the charging that we need will exist. But in the interim period, I think we are best positioned to guide this. And whatever efforts, I personally believe that whatever efforts that we spend in developing this ecosystem will result in a reward in terms of the word of mouth, in terms of customer loyalty.
Right. So, that's a very interesting thought. Like you said, you've got to do it to at least get the ball rolling. And I think I'd like to bring you in, because with Ather, Aravind, you all are also doing something very similar, though on your own. You have your proprietary charging standard, which you have sort of open sourced. What's been the experience there, and what is actually the end goal? Do you think, ideally, yes, I assume you would say the end goal is the Ather charging network, or do you think that perhaps commonalizing it with the car, the CCS2, let's say, for example, is the sort of North Star?
Yeah, I think I'll take up all 18 minutes if I end up going through that. But very quickly, I think before Ather started, a lot of the discussions around EV were very West-driven, which was, hey, West wanted to think about moving from petrol to EVs, so then they were building out high-voltage architecture platforms, and everything else was built around that. When Ather started, there was no footprint or roadmap for us to follow. No one was thinking about the full experience end-to-end, and no one was even interested in building out charging infra for a two-wheeler startup that was just beginning. No one else was thinking about fast charging for electric two-wheelers. So then what that gave us was an opportunity to look at a blank slate and say, okay, if we had to build out a great scooter, and then what is part of a great scooter is a great charging experience, and then let's marry both of that together. So fundamentally then, we built out a standard and connector that allowed us to both have onboard chargers and offboard chargers. We needed a connector that wasn't bulky, more expensive in terms of overall BOM cost, which the CCS2 would have been for us. So there was opportunity to figure out what can work for low voltage architecture platforms, and therefore we built out that standard and that connector. And actually it's no more proprietary, because it's now an official Indian standard as well. BIS has made it an official standard, part of all your FAME documents, subsidy documents. So I think the main goal for us always was that charging for electric two-wheelers has to be seamless, has to be almost invisible. You should not be worried about it. When you go to a charging station, it should work. And so we also evolved all the engineering that we put into our electric scooter. We did the same amount of engineering effort into our chargers, because no one else was building it out. We don't have high wattage chargers like cars, but we have 3 kilowatts. We have it distributed. We have it outside coffee shops, chai shops, on highways, very different use cases. So the need for us was, there's no one building out fast charging for two-wheelers. No one was building out electric two-wheelers, so let's build that first. No one was building out fast charging for two-wheelers, build that experience out, and then build the ecosystem around that. So then the focus for the last few years has been on interoperability, getting more CPOs to build out chargers on the same standard, give more options to any Ather customer or Lex customer, Type 7 customer, to have access to charging, available to charging. And we're also learning a lot from the four-wheeler charging space also, because there's a lot more collaboration that's happening. There's a lot more data sharing that's happening. And so now we realize two-wheelers now have come to a point where other CPOs are ready to invest in building out chargers. So now that's the next problem statement to think about, try to see how to solve that out. But the main goal is to make charging invisible, make charging anxiety almost nil when people are evaluating EV as an option. And the best way to do that is to give them the best charging experience consistently.
So, I have to ask you also, do you think that, because you mentioned the use case being separate, do you think because the use case for an electric two-wheeler is separate from an electric four-wheeler, your charging standard could be separate, or do you think,
Yeah, it's very different. I think we need to build out solutions that are scalable for electric two-wheelers. I think it would be very unfair to start using the same size standard of CCS2 onto an electric two-wheeler, because it's more expensive, there's unnecessary protocol requirements, there's unnecessary space constraints that we'll end up using if you use the same connector standard. And also if you're a CPO, you don't want a 3 kilowatt, 4 kilowatt scooter coming in and hogging a 30 kilowatt, 25 kilowatt, 60 kilowatt charger, where you can make more money in that 1 hour. So then fundamentally the CPO is like, I don't want to serve that customer. If if you start competing in the same thing, right? So I think it's very necessary that we build out solutions for electric two-wheelers differently with their use cases in need. And of course, the way charging patterns behavior is very different for electric two-wheelers and four-wheelers.
Right, thanks, Arvind. So, Anant, I have to bring you in here because what you're doing is essentially trying to solve the problem for maybe what we were just discussing, and that is swappable batteries, right? So we don't therefore have to worry about a charging network everywhere. You don't have to worry about, as you were saying, hogging charging time and chargers, things like that. You don't have to worry about which standard, as long as you have, of course, a common standard in terms of the battery. So do you think this is a solution that is ready to be deployed in India? Do you think it's a solution that will be rapidly accepted?
Yeah. No, thank you. First of all, I believe that in how we think we are wanting to make charging redundant, right? We are trying to actually mimic exactly the same way how today ICE vehicles are fueled, right? You run out of fuel, you go to a petrol station, you refuel and you go. Within 2 minutes, you're out. In a world today where everybody wants 10-minute delivery, who can wait for 15-minute charging? We are going backward in life if we are waiting for 15-minute charging. You have to do it in 2 minutes, 1 minute and out, right? So swapping is actually making charging redundant. And we have done that. Today we have around 60,000 vehicles on our platform, right? We do close to 60, 70,000 swaps a day, right? In like 22 cities that we do, we have two-wheelers, three-wheelers, sub 1.5 ton four-wheelers. Everybody is using the same battery, the same station. So it's completely interoperable. As of today, 44 different vehicle types are using the same battery in the same station. So it's completely interoperable. So it is, when you say, is it possible? We have proven it at scale. We have done 130 crore kilometers already, and it's being done. I think charging, if I think of it in India, it's a triangle of a problem. The capex is very high in India, followed by utilization is very low, and then we are capping the tariff. So you spend more in the capex vis-a-vis what China spends or what US spends. Your utilization is sub 10%, maybe sub 2% in many locations, where the world talks about 30, 40, China is 40% plus utilization levels, and the tariffs are capped. How do you make money? Right? So it's a classic capex and revenue paradox. The ROI will be very, very difficult to make. So I think that's where we need to think how we can move forward, and I think swapping solves a lot of those issues significantly.
So, Anand, that's a very interesting thing that you said. Yes, it is a kind of paradox, in terms of setting up a charging infrastructure, capping costs in terms of charging cost. But you've also got, I would say, other concerns with swapping that seem to be driven more from safety and things like that in terms of battery handling. You're removing something that is, at least in the consumer's mind, maybe dangerous and needs to be handled with care. How are you all managing this, in terms of myth busting, if I were to put it that way?
Good that you asked. So as I said, we have done close to 130 crore kilometers. My battery is promiscuous in nature. It doesn't belong to one vehicle. It's not wedded to one vehicle. It goes into a two-wheeler, into a three-wheeler, into a Piaggio auto, then comes out, goes into a Yatri, e-rickshaw. We have not had one accident. Nobody else possibly can claim it. Not one accident in 130 kilometers across so many vehicle types. So it is absolutely safe. And the reason for the safety is, when a battery comes back into the station, we check it with the cloud, with the twin, and check for all the 150 parameters. And if there's anything that is wrong with the battery that comes in, immediately we quarantine the battery. We are not allowing a sick battery to go into the market. Right? Whereas the accidents happen, all the issues that you see in a fixed battery vehicle or anything is because you don't know whether there is a problem occurring, and you continue to ride it. And that's when it worsens and it becomes a problem. In a swappable battery, you don't allow it to propagate because you, at the very instance when there is a problem, you quarantine the battery in the station. And you correct it and then only it goes out. So it's very safe. We have not had any incident. You have to follow the standards. And I think if you do it rightly, it is proven to be right.
Right. So, not to pitch the two of you into a debate, but Arvind, you all are very steadfastly on board charging, right? Do you see a case where, swappable batteries can also make sense, or what's your take on this?
I'm very pro EV ecosystem, so I'm going to say yes, there is a case. But I think the reason why again, it all depends on the OEM vision of how you're building out products is allowing us to have direct charging allows us to control the experience on that battery always consistently. Battery, battery usage over patterns, you start getting used to the way the vehicle changes, right? A promiscuous battery that keeps changing every few days or weeks on your scooter gives you a very, you're not comfortable with that battery performance every time. Sure, there are checks and balances, which is great to hear. And as soon as he said no accident, I touched wood. But it's just, we feel that there is a case for swapping, but I think we feel that's very strong in B2B use cases where downtime cannot exist. It's a very different model, it's a very different use case. But we're also seeing a lot of Ather customers use it for B2B. They know how to build patterns, they get comfortable with the range that comes with the scooter, they're comfortable with getting 20-minute charging, get that 40 kilometers, 50 kilometers, go on to the next thing. Humans need brakes, they start figuring out brakes around the charging. And if you can charge at home, why do you need to go back to a centralized charging possibility? I think that's our mindset, which is fueling, and the current way of fueling vehicles is like a water pump. You have to go, like, in olden times, there was one water pump in a village, everyone will go, come back. That's how fueling is. But if you can get water taps at home, which now you can get energy at home, why do you want to still continue that behavior for personal mobility? So that's at least our thought process around it. But fundamentally, direct charging allows us to give a great experience, allows better rideability features because you keep it on the base of the scooter. So there are multiple things around that. But if the answer is, do you believe there are use cases for swapping? The answer is very simply yes. They can exist and both can coexist.
Right. Yeah. Thanks, Aravind. So, Balaji, to bring you into this same discussion, for a passenger vehicle, swapping is a lot more complex given the weight and the size of the battery. But I think there's an interesting point that, in terms of a business, downtime is, something you don't want. For commercial vehicles, which have, let's say, fixed routes and things like that, and do you see this as a solution for your commercial vehicle applications?
Okay, I think I should say that my company no longer makes commercial vehicles because I belong to the
passenger vehicles,
company,
right.
which just recently demerged. But jokes aside, I think
yes, the demerger aside, yes.
I think demerger aside, I think same thoughts as Arvind's, right? In terms of, does it make sense today versus does it have the potential to make sense? Right, I think the answers for both might be slightly different. We do see there are commercial applications with a very well-defined route where even a fleet owner might want to sort of do something like this. There are certainly those in other parts of the world that do that. And I think, the key thing when it comes to swapping is standardization of battery. Now, we are on an exponential curve in terms of battery cost optimization, battery energy density optimization, and so forth. At some point, that curve will flatten out. And at that point, it might make eminent sense to do something like this, across predictable use cases, because at that time, you're not really foregoing anything. Because you have to remember that when you sign up for battery swapping, you're essentially saying that you're fixing what kind of battery can go into into your entire fleet practically. And if you're still in the fleet building mode, if you're still, hoping for cost down on the next iteration of your product or higher battery range on the next iteration of your product, that might be something that a fleet owner might not be willing to forego, right, at this point. But I do believe that in the long run, there might be certain cases where it makes sense. And, in certain cases, given the unpredictability of where one needs to go, it might not be quite easy.
Okay, thanks, Balaji. So, we are close on time, I know, and I think a couple of you have also flights to catch. But just to wrap up, every time we have EV discussions, EV conclaves, like I think we were discussing before this as well, charging is always seemingly the big issue here. Now, I know there's no sort of one solution to this, but what do you think is the one major breakthrough that is needed in the charging ecosystem, so that we're not here again next year discussing the same the same problem? What do you think would be the one major breakthrough, whether it's policy, whether it's technology, whatever?
I think if I may just take 30 seconds, I think the biggest differentiator when it comes to charging would be a right to charge, essentially making the availability of charging a requirement, basically a civic infra requirement for municipal governments and state governments around the country. Because the minute that comes in, the conversation changes. The conversation changes for a charge point operator who is approaching, a mall or a commercial building saying, hey, can I install a charger there? To the owner of the commercial building or the mall trying to figure out, okay, now who can help me with this problem of installing or providing a charging facility for my customers? I think that's, to me, the biggest game changer. The minute that comes in, then this is not the problem of EV OEMs or of charge point operators. It's rather collective responsibility of society as a whole to ensure that charging is solved.
And I think that solves a problem for all of the, the complexes, the societies, where also people do face challenges in terms of getting the, like you said, the right to charge. So that's an interesting thought. What about you, Arvind? What's the one thing breakthrough you see?
Yeah, I think last year in similar conferences, I was saying that interoperable standards. So that's been taken care of, I think, in electric two-wheelers. I think the next big thing for us would be, can Indian standards start being the global standards? I think that would be the next exciting challenge. How can we showcase India's, a growing two-wheeler EV market and define standards globally? I think that would be very interesting. But within India, I think two things: this right to charge and a more clear definition is we need more, I think, policies and enablement for home charging. I think that's a big thing. That's the next thing to just start focusing and supporting and enhancing. That's one thing. And there's a lot of conversations right now around something called UEI. There's a lot been discussions across multiple panels that says, oh, too many apps are around there. How can we enable it? I think there's going to be a solution that's just like you can use any app to go on any charger, enable immediate charging settlements, give consumers options on which app they're comfortable with, use any app to pay. I think that will also unlock a lot of friction around charging experiences. So these two things, I think, for me mainly would be how can we start getting more policy into apartment and home charging. I think that's one focus. There's a lot of focus on public charging. And the second one would be around, can something like UEI come in and truly make charging frictionless and seamless? I think those two things would be great to see over the next 1 year, for sure.
Right. Thanks. And Anant, what about you?
Mine is a very low-hanging requirement. I think India has spent very inadequately on the charging infrastructure. If I again compare it with the likes of China, $17 billion, we have spent we do close to $150 to $200 million a year. So when we think of having 30-40% of our fleet to be EV by 2030, I think I'm coming back again to the triangle of paradox that we are talking about. We need to reduce the capex. You can only push somebody till so much. Everybody is very gung-ho about charging infrastructure, but if they don't make money around it, they will stop. You will find a lot of chargers not working on the highways and everywhere because it's very difficult. One person to man a station 24/7, you need 70,000 rupees. 70,000 rupees is required. So if that's the kind of OPEX you're looking at, who is going to operate those things? It's easy to put up. It's very difficult to sustain. So I think we really need a lot of improvements around that. But the requirement, I would say India should think of really subsidies around PME drive has come, but I think it's woefully short. 2,000 crores is nothing, right? We need to spend a lot. Today we are only 30,000 chargers or something. We need to get to more than 1 million plus in 2030. I think that itself is a very low number according to me. So a lot of work needs to be done. I think a lot of money has to flow into the system. I think what Tata is doing is amazing. What big companies have to really do, they have to take the step forward, but government also has to step in with a lot of subsidies. I think what we are spending today is much, much below what we are aspiring for.
Right. Thanks, Anand. So I think that's quite interesting in terms of our one major breakthrough, as you were saying, the right to charge. We've got to do that. You've got to have it easy to pay for it. And I think we've just got to have a business case to support the CPOs. So three, I would say, hopefully breakthroughs we see next year. And we move on to discussing other perhaps challenges or newer greenfield kind of targets that we have in electric charging. So thank you, gentlemen, so much for being part of this panel, and thank you all for being here. Right. With that, we wind up, of course, our session.